All right. Hello, everybody. We've just gone live on Facebook and we've opened up the Zoom meeting as well. So I know it can take a little bit for people's connections to boot on. So we're just going to take a minute here to relax and get comfortable while people are funneling in. So if you haven't already, please feel free to grab yourself some water, some tea, anything like that that you might need. We'll plan to get going here very, very shortly. So yeah, I can see that the number is crawling up. So I am just going to give it about another 15 to 30 seconds. Once I see it stabilize, we'll go. Okay, looks like we still got some people funneling in, but I'm ready to just go on ahead. So let's get rolling. So I'm excited to share that today's talk will be another installment of the EQIT Strengthening Business Practices training. This one's going to be covering staff recruitment and staff retention. So we know that this is something that can be of a great concern in the industry. So we're hopeful that you'll pick up some useful things to use in your day-to-day moving forward. For those unfamiliar, my name is Michael Taylor. I serve as Early Learning Ventures Outreach Manager. And for today, at least, I'll be your chat moderator. If you or your organization is unfamiliar with ELV, please reach out to me after this and I'd be happy to go into detail the work we're doing. To just ground ourselves just very briefly in that work, we're a shared services organization that focuses on supporting providers on the tech and business admin side of childcare. So we run the Colorado iteration of a national shared services resource platform, which is chock full of templates, forms, savings tools, all kinds of things for providers. And this resource platform, it's actually free for all Colorado-based EC folks for at least the rest of 2020. So I'll make sure to include links on how to access this in the post-webinar messaging. There's going to be quite a bit of things in there that actually tie to today's talk around staff recruitment and retention, most specifically the Acquire for Hire tool. If you haven't heard about that, don't worry, it's pretty new this year and it's absolutely wonderful. It helps with that job hiring process. We'll actually have a What's Up Wednesday video on our Facebook page with our client support team discussing that next week. So please like our Facebook page if you haven't already. We also run a childcare management system, Alliance Core. As you've probably heard, we have implemented some pandemic-related updates to our system, including the capability of touchless sign in and out, and then also the capability for temperature and health checks. So yes, if you haven't followed our page, please do so. We'll have some, we have these webinar series on there. We have a bunch of grants and things related to what might be available for you. And then we also have that What's Up Wednesday series every Wednesday. So finally, before I introduce and hand it over to our guest speakers, I do just want to highlight just a couple of housekeeping items. First, our post-webinar messaging will be coming about 30 minutes to an hour after this webinar concludes. It'll include a copy of today's slides, a recording of the talk, a link to some of the resources that Elsa and Alicia are going to be discussing, and then information about ELV. Second, our guest speakers will be having our audience members interact with a poll and some other things on a few different slides in here. So be prepared to have to use your computer a little bit here. Okay. Let's get to our guests. So once again, we are joined by Elsa, who is the Leadership Development Manager here at ELV, and then Alicia Mullins, who works a little bit with us, but also works for the Early Childhood Partnership of Adams County. They are experts at this kind of stuff. They've had the training for it. So, I am excited to just turn it on over to them. So Elsa, I'm going to stop sharing my screen if you want to take over.
Great. And as soon as you see the slideshow, Alicia, you're set to kick us off.
All right. Hello, my name's Alicia, and Elsa and I will be running this training today. This training was developed by the National Center on Early Childhood Quality Assurance with funding from the Office of Child Care and the Office of Head Start, both part of the Administration for Children and Families under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So that's where this training came from. So today we're going to dive deep into the strategies to help you recruiting and retaining qualified staff. During today's session, we will review best practices related to recruiting, interview, and hiring new employees. We'll discuss a framework for building an effective orientation plan for new employees, identify key components of a staff handbook, and then identify some strategies providing feedback to employees. So, if you have already watched or attended one of the training videos that Elsa and I have done before, you're probably familiar with this slide, that working with children is your passion, but running a business may not be your passion. But consider that sound business practices help to build a strong business so you can dedicate more time and resources to your program. Strong business practices will also help improve your stability and sustainability so you can keep your doors open and serve the children and families who you want to serve. So those slides stay consistent throughout this whole series. And let's get started. Go ahead, Elsa.
Thanks, Alicia. So we wanted to take a minute to hear from our audience about some past experiences that might play into how you work with your own staff. So in the chat, if you could share either your characteristics of an ideal supervisor or your own favorite experience as a new employee, we would love to collect some of those ideas around the ideal, what we're shooting for here. And Michael will read that out from the chat. So again, we're looking for characteristics of your ideal supervisor or your favorite experience as a new employee.
All right, everybody. So we are having several of them come in, so I'll just read them out as they come in. A consistent one that's already come up several times, and I would definitely agree with as well, is open communication, going both ways in communication along that kind of pathway. Somebody that is open to new ideas, so definitely not having that kind of closed mindset. Somebody that leads by example, ready to get their hands dirty with you. Supervisor that listens, makes you feel like your thoughts and ideas are being heard and considered, definitely. Somebody that gives positive feedback. I've definitely had that kind of manager that only ever talks to me when I do something wrong. So much better to have a combo. And then as a new employee, having a supervisor give me freedom to try new things. I do think a consistent thread, the word hasn't been used in here, but I would highlight it as just autonomy, some level of it, being, we got some more coming in. Flexible, mindful, somebody that's a mentor, somebody who's consistently positive, somebody that values your previous experience. And just a lot of things such as that are popping in.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. And thanks, everyone, for weighing in with some of your ideas. There is a lot that we could say is the ideal. I do think a common thread there that I'm hearing is really clear expectations. The one thing that comes along with that clear communication is how to set people up for success at the beginning. So on that note, we will slide on over to staff recruitment and retention and get started. So this is a really big topic to tackle in one session, but we want to think of each of these steps as an item that's sort of part of a whole system of recruiting and retaining talented staff. And the system works best when all of these steps listed here is given thoughtful consideration, since they each play a crucial role. So today we're going to talk about how to write an effective job description, how to recruit talented staff, conducting interviews, the hiring process, the new employee orientation, the importance of a staff handbook, evaluating performance, and the leadership role in recruitment and retention. So first up, effective job descriptions. So they're at the core of staff recruitment. So you can kind of think of a job description as a blueprint. It provides the architecture or framework for the entire system that we just mentioned: interviewing, hiring, orienting, and managing performance. So having a job description for each position in your program gives you the opportunity to sort of lay out how each role will serve a different need within the business. So why are they important? For hiring, it really helps when anyone coming into the organization knows what's expected of them. For performance management, it's really helpful to set expectations for staff, and you need to have a job description that outlines the expectations of the position. An individual professional development plan goals should be really closely aligned with that job description. We also want to make sure to prevent discrimination with our job descriptions. By clearly outlining the requirements of a job, a business can help to prove that its hiring, promotion, and termination practices are based on job requirements rather than individual characteristics such as race, sex, or ethnicity. The job description outlines the role that the center needs, the qualifications and skill sets necessary to do the job, and where the position falls in the structure of a center. So within an effective job description, we see several key components. So we want to see a title, a brief summary of the position, information about the position's essential functions, tasks to be performed, and frequency, and that may include physical demands like being on your feet or moving from classroom to classroom. We want to see qualifications required, which might include the skills, knowledge, and abilities employees must possess in order to successfully perform the job's essential functions. And it should also include requirements and preferences for education level, credentials, and years of experience. We want to note our type of position, and that's full or part-time, typical work hours and work shifts, work days of the week, and overtime expectations. You definitely don't want to waste time interviewing someone who's only available on Wednesdays when you really need someone for Tuesday, Thursday. We want to remember that our non-exempt employees are eligible for overtime pay, but exempt employees are not eligible for overtime pay. And that gets determined based on the Fair Labor Standards Act guidelines, which includes salary level and job duties. The vast majority of childcare positions are non-exempt, which means that they're eligible for overtime. We also want to include information about the work environment. If someone has a lot of allergies and they see a job description saying that there's a lot of time outdoors, they might be able to save time and not apply. We want to see who the position reports to within the center. And then there's generally a standard disclaimer, something like additional related duties assigned as needed. So we know that job descriptions can't cover every single thing possible under the sun. Childcare is a quickly moving field, and we do work with children. And you also have the option of including the salary or salary range, as well as a description of your organization. And I would personally recommend including that salary range, because if someone really expects a higher salary, you don't want to interview the perfect candidate and then discover that they just aren't able to accept that salary. So putting it out there up front can help with that. We also want to make sure that when you're writing job descriptions, you get people who are in the current position that's really similar to that position involved, and make sure that they believe that those job descriptions really reflect their tasks as well. So you're not looking to write down procedures in the job description. Some mistakes that we see are if the job description doesn't fairly represent the job, necessary skills are missing from the job description, the job description could be too vague, specific duties are not included in the job description, or if it was written by someone who doesn't know the job, includes discriminatory language, commits to employment for any period of time. We do recommend sticking with employment at will, which is the default in the state of Colorado. And if the position title is not clear or doesn't match the position, that's a red flag too. We also want to make sure that we are doing the following more effective practices. You might consult one of your board members or a human resources professional if needed. You want to make sure to consult your licensing rules and QRIS criteria. You want to update your job descriptions regularly. So it's a good idea to have a plan to review at a certain time of year annually, so that you can make changes as the needs of the program change, or maybe as your QRIS level increases. And then you want to develop the descriptions to support the organizational roles needed, rather than to support any one person's skill set. And well-written job descriptions can be used as a reference for performance management down the line, so they can be a really useful tool. And with that, I will hand us back over to Alicia.
All right. So, as Elsa said, the goal of recruitment is to find people who are the best fit for your program. So not everyone, of course, is going to be the right fit. So the time that is invested in recruiting and an interviewing process will pay off in the form of staff who are better fit with the organization. If you hire the wrong person for a job, you can spend more time and energy and resources managing the performance and potentially letting that person go, rather than and then having to find a replacement when you could have just found the right person in the first place. So when you're approaching recruitment, take a thoughtful, planned approach. Recruitment does not all start with placing an ad. It starts with ensuring that you have a current job description and a system of interview candidates, including a plan for who will interview the candidates with you. So who's going to do the interview of the candidates? You also need to plan for what the decision process will be when you're ready to extend that offer. Consider all of that when you're considering your recruitment plan. Once you have a recruitment plan, then you can identify where you want to find your viable candidates. So you can use multiple resources to recruit a wide variety of applicants. For example, you can use your personal and professional networks. You can use social media such as Facebook or Twitter. You can post the position on your program's website along with a full job description. Another great one that Michael talked about earlier and is on the screen here is ELV offers a resource to their members called Acquire for Hire. So definitely look for more info on that to come up, because that is a great place that allows you to post on several different job sites quickly, so it's not taking as much time and it doesn't have all those extra fees too. So it's a great resource. I recommend looking into it. But as a reminder, when you post a job opening, include the most relevant and necessary skills for the position. This will allow candidates to self-identify whether they're a good fit or not. So once you've identified some viable candidates, the next step is to talk with them to determine whether they would be a good fit for your open position. I'm sure that many of you have led an interview process before, but it's best practice to thoughtfully plan your interview questions in advance. So that's just helpful to prepare. There are many reasons this is a good practice. One reason is because consistent and careful planning interview questions can help prevent discrimination in hiring. It's important to be aware of the laws that prevent discrimination in hiring. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission enforces federal laws that make it illegal to discriminate. Some of you may have heard of the term protected class. These are groups that are protected by law from employment discrimination. So the protected classes are race or color, religion, sex, which includes pregnancy, gender identity, and sexual orientation, national origin, age, which protects individuals 40 years and older, disability, and genetic information, which covers information about an individual or family member's genetic makeup or testing. In addition to protected classes of individuals, it's also illegal to discriminate based on these factors, which is harassment, which is identified as unwelcome conduct, retaliation, which refers to retaliating against a job applicant for asserting his or her equal employment opportunity rights. It's important to know these protected classes when preparing interview questions so that you don't hit any of those markers. So employers cannot discriminate in terms and conditions of employment based on these characteristics. Therefore, employees must be careful not to ask questions during an interview that could either be discriminatory or appear to be discriminatory. To illustrate this, we actually have a little activity It's poll questions. And so I think Michael's going to get that going, and you'll answer the poll questions and then we'll review.
All right. I have launched it out to you all, so it should pop up on your screen with the options to make some polls. So please get going, and I'll plan to just give it a sec before closing it. And so I do see that, we have just a couple individuals that were only able to join via phone. And so I'm going to read off the questions. So all of these is basically, the option is either, is this a legal or an illegal question to ask? The first question is, do you have children? The second question is, are you able to work overtime? The third question is, what country are you from? The fourth question is, are you authorized to work in the United States? And the fifth and final question is, are you able to perform the necessary job duties and requirements? So we have a couple people. So if it's not letting you submit, I do apologize. I see that most of our attendees have been able to answer, but there are a couple people that the polling is not, they're able to see the questions. So if you just want to mark those down for yourself, I'm going to give it another 15, 30 seconds just to let this creep up a little bit higher. All right, so I'm going to give it until the poll's been up for 2 minutes. That's only another 10 seconds. All right. So I am going to now share the poll, and that should allow you, Alicia, to see the results as well. Did it pop up for you?
Yeah, it did.
Oh, perfect.
So let's go through them just real quick. Do you have children? Most of you thought that was an illegal question, and that is correct. It's actually illegal to ask, do you have children? The second one is, are you able to work overtime? And that one is legal, which you were all right about that one. There's almost full percent on that one. What country are you from? That one is a little touchy, and it can get a little hard to tell whether you can ask or not, but that one also is illegal. You can't ask which country you're from. Are you authorized to work in the United States? Is a legal question, so you can ask that one. And then, are you able to perform the necessary job duties and requirements is also a legal question, so you can't ask that one. So this is just a little activity to look at so that you can think about what are you asking in your questions, and maybe to just double check before you ask the question whether it's legal or illegal, so that you're covering yourself when you're doing those interview questions.
Alicia, I did get a good question. It's something that is involved with the childcare industry, is there are a lot of teachers that, bring their children to the center where they work. So how do you, navigate that kind of difficult, is it you still don't ask? Is it, I would
suggest that you still don't ask. That you leave that upon them if they want to ask if they can bring their child with them, or if you have spots for their child. And I would suggest that you wouldn't ask that, though.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. And then the other one that did come in, which is, I'm going to sadly let you know that we don't have the answer for it now, is about the country. What about the new background checks? Licensing, last month or 2 months ago, released this whole new background check thing. And basically in my conversations, it's still just not exactly perfectly clear. So, we're not licensing, so we're still awaiting exact word on that. So I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer, but yeah. I'm going to get back to you then, Alicia.
No problem. Thank you, everybody, for answering those polls and for putting yourself out there, because those are kind of hard questions to know what to do with. So So let's talk a little bit more about the interview process. When planning those questions in advance, it's a good way to prevent possible discriminatory questions. So I would suggest just sticking to those questions you plan on asking. But there is another good reason that this is a good practice. It helps to create a level playing field for all the candidates, so everyone is asked the same questions. It also helps minimize the potential for bias on how you feel about a candidate. We want to propose some simple processes for approaching interviews with your organization. So here is our interview process recommendations. If possible, conduct a phone interview in advance of an in-person interview. Identify the strongest candidates to bring to your face-to-face interview. This will help minimize the impact on the program and reduce the time commitment of bringing all those candidates in for face-to-face. Determine interview questions in advance, like we talked about, and ask the same questions of all candidates. This, I would say, is true of the phone interviews as well as the face-to-face interviews. So you're asking those same questions. Be consistent in your interview process. Apply it to all the candidates. For example, if you include an interactive component such as being active, going into the classroom and doing something, ensure that all the candidates complete that same component. And then lastly, use an interview scoring system to assess each candidate on the same qualities. So this can help to prevent potential bias. It also will give you a tangible reminder of each candidate's fit for the position when you have completed all interviews and are ready to make a decision. A final note on that is when you're scoring those, it doesn't have to be a complex scoring system. It can be simple as 4 or 5 things that are most important for the position that you want to assess each candidate on. And the ratings could be as simple as like a 1 to 5 scoring system. Be sure to write a few notes on each score so you can remember why you rated them at that. So when you're filling those out, those are just helpful hints. And we will have in our resources a little more tips on those interview questions. So once you've done that, then you start on the hiring process, which is once you've interviewed resumes and conducted interviews, the next step is to make an offer and hire those candidates. So remember, you should hire the best individual that you can afford if possible. It's better to spend more time looking for the right candidate than hire the candidate that doesn't meet the center's need. As we discussed earlier, if you hire a person who isn't the right fit and doesn't meet your expectations, then you're left with a bunch of other problems. So it's better to do the best you can to hire the right candidate. If you believe you found the right candidate, then it's time to check the references as a way to validate your assumption with feedback from others who have worked with those employees. So I would wait to check the references until you have narrowed your list down to the candidates you want to hire. Don't waste time checking them on people that you don't think that you're going to hire. Seek out references from people who have worked directly with the candidate, preferably people at multiple levels. Candidates who are currently working may not want you to contact their current manager until you've made a firm hire offer, because if they're still working there, that could cause some upset. So in these situations, you can consider making an offer to the candidate contingent on checking the final references with their current employer. When checking references, remember that you're looking to gather information that is relevant to the position. So the same rules about discrimination in candidate interview questions apply to reference checks. It's a good practice to write down the questions that you want to ask in advance so you can focus your attention on what you're hearing rather than what your next question is going to be. Let's look at what you can expect to hear from your former employer. Most current or former employers will not provide more information than the confirmation of employment and hire exit dates. This is important information to verify so you can know their past experience. Many companies have policies that prohibit sharing any information other than confirmation of employment dates and employment, just to be aware of that. A common question you can ask during reference checks is, would you hire this person back again? So the candidate's reference checks out and you decide to make an offer. Once you've done all those reference checks and all the interview process, the next step is to extend a verbal offer. If the candidate accepts your offer, the best practice is then to confirm that offer in writing. The written offer letter confirms the position title, the start date, salary, benefits, work hours, and any conditions that may need to be met before employment can be deferred. An example of this could be those background checks that we talked about earlier, or anything else that they need to get done before they can get hired. Keep the letter brief. It's only to confirm the basic details to ensure that you're both on the same page. Explicitly state in the letter that the position is an employment at will relationship, which also talked a little bit about that at will earlier. At will means that the employer and employee are legally allowed to terminate the employment with or without cause and with or without notice at any time. So just make sure that they know that ahead of time. We recommend providing 2 copies of the letter, one to be signed by the candidate and then that they need to return to you, and one that the candidate can keep for their records. So now you've gone through that whole process and hired the person, and now you're going to work on orientation with them, and Elsa will talk about that.
Hooray, you found a good person and you hired them. So imagine that it's the first day of your new job. You arrive at your new job, excited and maybe a little bit nervous. When you get to the center, the person at the front desk doesn't know who you are. She wasn't told that someone new was starting that day. The director isn't available because she had an appointment outside of the center that morning. One of the teachers you met when you interviewed recognizes you, but is busy with her classroom, so can't really stop to talk or help you. You're told to wait and the director should be back soon. When she arrives, she hands you a folder full of paperwork and tells you to read and complete the forms that are inside. She leads you down to your new classroom and tells you to go on in and introduce yourself to the other teacher. She apologizes that she can't spend more time with you, but she has another meeting that she needs to get to. You don't see her again for the rest of the day. Deep breaths all around. So orienting a new employee is a critical step to ensuring a successful future for both the employee and the center. So how long should an employee orientation last? A new employee's orientation should be an ongoing process for the first few months of employment. It is good practice to involve more people than just the director, and to make sure that they're all aware that they're involved in this process, unlike in the example before. And you want to include both leadership team members and peers so that the new hire can learn from multiple people. Bringing other staff into the orientation process helps to distribute the responsibilities and allows for other feedback on new employee performance from multiple perspectives. You might want to consider assigning a peer staff member as a mentor to a new employee. This helps to create a connection with another staff member and gives the new employee someone who can answer questions who isn't a supervisor. It also provides a leadership opportunity for that mentor. So what should we cover during the orientation process? Organizational cultures, so that's attitudes, beliefs, mission and vision of the organization, values and philosophy. What are our organizational norms? Where do our staff keep their lunches? Ways information is communicated among staff. For example, do things come primarily via email? Is there a large group text message or a phone tree? What the dress code is, and all of those little details that make it feel a lot more comfortable to show up at work. Personnel paperwork for new employees is a key part as well. Emergency procedures for the program. Administrative processes, policies, and procedures. We'll talk more about a staff handbook in a minute, and that's where most of those will live. You also want to make sure the new hire is You also want to make sure the new hire is aware of any benefits available, for example, professional development opportunities. We want to clarify our classroom expectations and policies and procedures at the classroom level as well. Any expectations around family engagement and communication and how we expect our teachers to get to know the parents and children in their classroom. A plan for announcing new staff members to parents. Expectations for performance observation and feedback during the first few months and moving forward. state licensing requirements for any specific orientation and training of new employees. So when we think about the employee orientation, we want to think about what the new employee needs to know on day one. What is most critical? What regulations do they need to know right when they start? What are the basic competencies? There's such a big amount of information a new employee needs to learn. So try to break it down a little bit. Think about what is needed on the first day versus the first week versus the first few months. You might even want to create an orientation checklist that documents all the areas that need to be covered with new employees. And you can prioritize the items on the checklist, letting those priorities create a logical training timeline. So let's think a little bit more about that. So the bulk of orientation time is really spent familiarizing new employees with policies and procedures in the earlier stages of employment. So that might be your day one, week one sorts of information. And as time goes on, you'll slowly transition from transferring information to more of a coaching and mentoring model. That later phase is focused on reinforcing what has been taught, ensuring understanding, and building relationships. And then we want to keep in mind how we're documenting our employee orientation process. So like we said before, we might have that checklist, and you might have that process even written down and shared with the new employee. Having that checklist to keep track of what's been reviewed and what still needs to happen can help you to see how far your new staff have gotten in the process. You might even want to include lines for dates and initials next to each task, one for the new employee and one for the person training, to ensure accountability for the lesson or information being taught. And then you might want to maintain a final signed orientation process record in the employee's personnel record for future reference if needed. And this moves us on to the importance of the staff handbook. So as you see on the screen, ELV's resource platform can be a really good resource on staff handbooks as well. We do have a significant number of templates for different kinds of policies that you're welcome to copy and paste and sort of adapt for your center as appropriate. You do always want to make sure that you get someone in the legal field to review and approve, just to make sure that everything's kosher. A staff handbook itself is not a legal requirement, but it's a really good idea. It informs employees of their rights and responsibilities. It serves as a reference guide for employees on all policies. And it might even help to protect the center from potential lawsuits. We hope that, like most other policies, a staff handbook will be reviewed and updated annually to reflect any big changes. And there might be changes in laws that affect how you treat employees. That might mean something like an increased minimum wage. There might be a change in internal policies or practices, and you'll want the handbook to reflect them. If something significant changes before you do your annual review, you can also amend the handbook by writing out the new policy and distributing it to staff. We do suggest that for best practice, handbooks should always be consistent with the law. We also recommend that handbooks always reflect actual employer practices. If you don't do it, even if it's an ideal, don't write it in your handbook yet. Your handbook should reflect how you're actually handling situations. And handbooks should reflect your program's commitment to compliance with the law. We also highly recommend that all staff should sign an acknowledgement form confirming that they've received the handbook and understand all the information within it. So, different elements of a staff handbook can include the organizational mission, vision, philosophy, and guiding principles. Also information about organizational structure and employee benefits. Administrative policies such as payroll and timekeeping practices and time off from work. For example, how you handle vacation, personal days, sick days, attendance expectations, and work start and end times, and communication around those things. What the employee requirements are for background checks, ongoing training, and much more. Organizational policies around cell phone use, social media use, confidentiality, and really anything else that you want to set a policy around. You'll also want to include legal policies that are relevant to legal requirements, like disability accommodations, Family and Medical Leave Act procedures, pregnancy disability leave, jury duty, and military leave. You should have a policy stating that harassment and discrimination are prohibited. The handbook should also include confirmation of employment at will, which we talked about earlier when talking about hiring letters. Be careful that there is no handbook language that would imply that a contract exists, because that could prevent you from being able to terminate someone. Use statements like failure to comply with these policies may be grounds for discipline up to and including termination, again, to help prevent any potential lawsuits. And include a statement about the employer right to change policies, that the handbook can be changed at any time with or without advance notice to employees. A signed employee acknowledgement that the employee received the handbook and has reviewed and understands the information in it can help prevent someone later saying that they weren't aware of a policy or expectation. Common mistakes that we see in employee handbooks include including information that might quickly get outdated, like a current employee healthcare premium or a list of that year's holidays. For things like that that are time sensitive, you want to document that separately where it can be easily updated as needed without requiring a whole handbook overhaul. Sometimes centers forget to have employees sign the statement saying that they've received a copy of the handbook. We do really strongly recommend including that. And the employee has the responsibility to read and ask questions for clarification if needed, but that can save worlds of trouble down the road. It can cause issues if you haven't had an attorney review the handbook before sharing it with employees. So we do advise running that by your legal counsel if you have some. Any language that implies an employment contract, avoid that, like we said before. And then inconsistent policy enforcement can be another problem. So if you have a policy, you need to say the same thing that you're doing, because otherwise it can lead to accusations of unfair treatment of individuals, bias, or discrimination. And that can be a big liability for the center. You also want to check your policies and make sure they're aligned and don't contain any conflicting information. And you don't want to use confusing language or a format that makes the information difficult to read and understand. It should be something your staff can refer to as needed. And back to Alicia.
All right, so now that you've gone through hiring and doing orientation and having them go through the employee handbook, then you should start thinking about feedback. Feedback in employees' performance should begin at the moment of hire and continue through the employee's time with the organization. So performance evaluations are important for many reasons, including they motivate employees and create a culture of learning. They provide an opportunity for coaching and mentoring. They serve as an effective method of recognition. They serve as an effective method of communication, and they promote fairness and equity. Employees want to know what is expected of them. Some of the questions employees might ask are, what am I supposed to be doing? How well am I required to do it? What do you think of my performance? How will I be rewarded? How can I improve my performance? Documentation is an essential element in evaluating their performance. So documenting both the good and the bad. Many people only associate documentation with the bad stuff. So be sure that you're documenting all the wonderful things that your staff are doing too. A common mistake in evaluating performance is giving a good performance review on an employee who isn't performing well. If you give someone a good performance review, but then decide you need to terminate them because they aren't doing a good job, you expose yourself to liability. So be honest in your feedback and consistent in your actions. So make sure that you're providing feedback to the employee and giving them the opportunity to correct the behavior if needed. Then let's talk about the importance of feedback. So feedback is important because providing feedback to employees allows them to know how well they're performing in their position. So it answers some of those questions that they asked in the previous slide. Receiving feedback from employees provides valuable information on how well the organization is functioning. Providing feedback helps to communicate clear goals and expectations. Staff morale is improved when they give them clear expectations and provide them with opportunities for ongoing regular communication. Providing feedback to employees demonstrates that you value them. And also receiving feedback promotes a culture of fairness and equity. Essential elements of providing employee feedback include using clear language, articulating clear expectations, ensuring that there are no surprises. There should be ongoing communication throughout the year, so when the performance review comes up, it's already been discussed. It's not a surprise to them. Allowing the employee to complete a self-evaluation before a meeting. This helps you understand how the employee perceives their own performance and provides opportunity for discussion if you see things differently. Using two-way communication, setting goals for the coming year. Examples might include attending a new training or taking a class or completing a certificate. Introducing SMART goals. SMART goals stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So that's a great way to set a goal. Using the review as an opportunity for identifying an area to improve or an area the employee is interested in. This could be easily translated into an individual professional development plan. So it's a good way to start those. Sharing specific examples whenever possible. And this helps make things more concrete for the employee and more tangible. If performance needs to improve, include elements such as current and expected performances, timelines, measurements of performance, potential outcomes based on whether sufficient improvement was achieved. This information should be given to the employee verbally and also in writing so they can look back at it if they need to. Performance evaluations should be done at least annually, either on the employee's anniversary or at the same time for all employees. It's recommended that you meet privately, that you meet face-to-face, that you give the written review, give it to them shortly before the conversation to allow them to read and digest. Just make sure to be clear in your feedback, be straightforward and constructive in your assessment. Here are some ideas, sorry, I'm babbling, of effective practices that can help you prevent common challenges when providing feedback. When performance issues arise, begin documenting concerns and conversations with the employee regarding corrective behavior. Provide feedback to the employee and an opportunity of improvement to support their growth. Managers should always prepare for the conversation. Preparation should include thoughtful reflection on positive achievements and areas for improvement, and then solicit feedback from other staff if needed. Managers should provide feedback continually throughout the year and not just at the performance evaluation. So, as a leader, you must set the tone of the work environment. Your responsibility is to do what you can to create a positive work environment. Communicate regularly, share the mission, vision, and philosophy of your program, be as transparent as possible about your goals, expectations, and plans for the program, build a team that works together and supports the team program, and foster a positive work environment. People will be more productive, more successful, and happier in an environment that is positive. The opposite is true if you have a negative environment. You must keep your eyes and ears open in order to understand what's happening between other staff members. You as a leader set the tone for your program. It's important for leaders to set a positive tone and clear expectations for all staff. Fostering a positive work environment includes actively listening to the employees' concerns. It's important to hear the concerns raised by your employees because there are opportunities to improve your program. So listen to what your staff has to say to you. Take notice of trends in what staff are saying. Are they common themes that they keep repeating? If so, you may want to ask more pointed questions to understand the root of the problem and whether something needs more attention in your program. Assist staff in setting continuous professional goals to advance their skills to improve them as employees. So now Elsa's going to cover all that we talked about because we talked about a lot.
Yep, we stayed busy. So we covered a lot. We talked about elements of effective job descriptions, strategies for recruiting talented applicants, ideas for conducting interviews, steps to provide a verbal and written offer once you've found the right candidate, components of a framework for a new employee orientation, reasons why a staff handbook is important, approaches for evaluating employee performance and providing feedback, and your role as the leader in retaining talented staff. So we would once again like to turn to using the chat and asking Michael to be the voice of the chat. And we would love for you to type in a couple of things that you learned in the session that you plan to follow up on in your program. So once again, for the chat, if you can type in 1 or 2 things you've learned from the session that you plan to follow up in at your program.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elsa and Alicia. I do know it takes a little bit to type things out in the chat. So in the meantime, I just again want to go over a couple housekeeping things. So one that I actually totally spaced to mention in the initial pre-webinar talk. So this is one where you are going to have credit, professional development credit. So we'll have that out to you on Monday. It's not going to be today you get that. Monday or Tuesday of next week is when it will be coming. And then 2, you are going to be getting a copy of this presentation. You're going to be getting a copy of the slides. And one of the really big things that we talked about a couple times, but I do want to highlight again, is the Acquire for Hire tool, and then just a lot of the tools on the resource platform. So also we are including how you can get in contact with Elsa or the other managers here at Early Learning Ventures in case you want any kind of one-on-one time. That's going to be in the post-webinar messaging as well. And so while I've been talking, some people have been putting things in, and I'd also, I'm going to be reading through what some people put in, but if anybody has any other questions, we'd love to hear those as well. So one of the consistent themes I see, just, going through the job descriptions, what people noted is that, clear and concise job descriptions. I feel a lot of times that, everything that you said is like, yeah, that makes sense. But having all of them at once is sometimes a challenge. I know when I'm filling out job descriptions here, when we're hiring ELV, I'm always like, wow, a lot of things to put in. Let's see. I like this one, the orientation timeline extending past the initial introduction. I think that is a total key. I mean, it's a key to life. You are always learning and always needing to improve. So thank you for that. The legal and illegal questions to ask. That one, I've started a question while interviewing somebody here at ELV and then just hushed up immediately halfway through because I'm like, oh, wait, not allowed to ask that. So, just having a refresher on those can be quite handy. Let's see. Somebody mentioned that they are interested in using the ELV resource page to develop a handbook and evaluation questionnaire. So yeah, in that post-webinar messaging, we are going to have how to sign up for that free account. And then also, you're always able to reach out to our client support team. For those who don't know, the little mantra that we have on the business services team is if it's going to take you more than 2 minutes to figure something out, just call us instead. So even if you're not using Core, please utilize that little thing. Again, the importance of ongoing coaching and ongoing performance reviews and the highlighting of the positive things that a teacher is doing. Using the job description as an evaluation tool, that's very good one. Let's see, the legal pros side of it, of making sure that you're covering your bases from the legality side. That's another one that in my day-to-day role, I'm like constantly having to do with agreements is like, I say something, I send it over to legal. I think it's fine. And then it's just like, no. So that one's always fun. and then having a formal follow-up meeting after the initial orientation. So I do think that seems to be the consistent takeaway, is just the ongoing style of coaching, and that, you know, hiring an employee, you know, when they're 30 days, they're 90 days, whatever is up, that doesn't mean things are, that you're done, you know, onboarding that person and orienting them. So yeah, so we have about 5 minutes left here. If anybody has any distinct questions, whether that is for me on, you know, the resource platform core side of things, or if that is for Alicia and Elsa on today's training or takeaways or anything like that, please feel free to share. We'll plan to just hang around, but thank you so much for attending today. Thank you, Elsa and Alicia, you know, for sharing with us. And we'll make sure to have all this out to you very soon.
Yeah, one last thing to mention is just that in the follow-up as well, there will be a slide that looks just like this and has a whole bunch of different resources that you can access to support you in your human resources journey.
Awesome. Yeah, actually, you know, because of that, Elsa and Alicia, do you have any like one specific takeaway that you'd like to end on before we close this out?
I would end it with, it's all about clear expectations from before you hire someone to building them into maybe the next center director. The expectations are clear, people know what they're striving for.
Similarly, I would say that planning is key. So planning your interview questions, planning how you're going to do the job description, planning your orientation, planning how you're going to give feedback. All those things are important. So just thinking about things ahead of time. I know when I was a director early on, I kind of tried to fly by the seat of my pants, and it doesn't work so well. Planning is important.
Most definitely. So planning and communication, secrets to success and absolutely everything. But this as well. Okay. Well, thank you so much to our guest speakers. Thank you to our attendees. As I mentioned, early next week is when you will be getting the training certificate for today. And we'll be with you soon with the post-webinar messaging. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you soon.